Hello and welcome to the Art of Aging podcast, a series from United Church Homes. On this show, we look at what it means to age in America and in other places around the world, which is really important for this particular episode. And we do so taking a look at positive and empowering conversations that challenge, encourage, and inspire all to age with abundance. Today, it is my pleasure and privilege to be talking with Emma Twyning from the Center for Better Aging about her work and the work of the center in the UK to promote age-positive programming and address outdated ageist views. And we are just so excited to have you here. Hello, Emma.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me. It's a real privilege.
Yeah. Emma, before we get into it, I'd love for you to share some background about the Center for Aging Better and your role with it.
Yes, certainly. So I'm Emma Twyning. I'm the Director of Communications and Policy at the Center for Aging Better. We believe that everyone has the right to a good later life. We think that the whole of society benefits when people are able to age well. And we are concerned currently that as a society, we're not doing enough to support people. And that leads to many people, struggling in older age. So we are really focused on making aging better, particularly for those people. We work on three key areas. We kind of zoom in on three areas. So the first one is work and employment. So making sure that as we all get older, we have equitable access to work. That includes things like looking at ageism in recruitment, workplace cultures. It includes looking at things like flexible working. And we've just launched this age-friendly employer pledge, which is a pledge that employers can take to show that they value and recognize the importance of older workers and want to take steps to support them. And on the other side, it's also helping people who have fallen out of work. So as people get older, we know if they fall out of work, they're much less likely to be able to get back in. So we do a lot of work to support people to get back into work, and we try and influence policy around that. So we're trying to get national and local government more supportive of those individuals. Another key focus for us is homes. And in this country, our homes are generally quite poor quality, and they're not terribly accessible. So as people get older and their needs change, they don't necessarily have houses that are safe, warm, and enable them to live independently. They can actually live in quite dangerous homes as a result. And we know the people who are most at risk are people who've got ill health, people on low incomes, people who aren't in a position to change that. So we do a lot to try and improve the housing stock and support homeowners to improve their homes, but also trying to make new homes accessible. So getting new homes built to much better, more accessible standards. And then the third area is in many ways closest to my heart because I lead it, and that's around challenging ageism and trying to build an age-friendly movement. So we know that in this country and indeed across the world, that the societal narrative around aging is generally very negative, and we want to try and change that. So we'll be launching a big campaign, public-facing campaign in October. And we are going to be launching that as part of a wider age-friendly movement where we're trying to get people to think, feel, and act differently about aging and give people the kind of tools and inspirations to do things differently in their communities, in their workplaces, in their sectors, and generally try and make society more age-friendly.
Absolutely. Thank you. So where did this mission come from for the center? I mean, was the center established specifically for these three initiatives, or is this evolved from a longer conversation?
Yeah, much longer, sort of a few years of work, really building up the evidence base around, what are the things that help people to age well? And there are many, many things we could be doing. There are also lots of brilliant organizations out there doing other things. So we really tried to look at where we could make a difference and where we had a bit of a USP. And particularly on something like ageism, we did lots of work looking at where ageism comes from, how society talks about older people, what drives these views, what perpetuates these kind of ageist stereotypes and this internalized ageism that we all have. And we really thought, with that, we can make a difference because we feel like if we can unlock that, that will help us to make some of those wider changes that I just talked about. It feels like that's a really fundamental barrier.
Yeah, I get your emails on a regular basis. I just got one earlier, and I know it says Emma from the Center for Better Aging, and I know you weren't sending that out personally, but I do feel this connection to your work. And I know that here in the U.S., we also are doing a lot of work in this area and have a lot of it is based in the research done by the Reframe Institute. And from what I can tell from reading things from your center and here in the U.S., that there are some pretty similar common commonalities between the public views of aging and the sources of ageism. Do you see that as well between our two cultures?
Absolutely. And all around the world. And I should say, we've learned so much from looking at what other people are doing in different places, including internationally. I'm a big fan of, you've got some brilliant campaigners around ageism and ageist attitudes in the US, many of whom we're in touch with. And I personally really love and learn from. But I think you're right. Fundamentally, these are all the same core challenges. And the fact that we can learn from what each other are doing is a huge asset. The kind of similarities in the way that we all think about aging and the way that kind of manifests and the way we talk about aging, are really clear to see. And I think often people tell me there's a sort of cultural difference in the way that we think about aging, and that might be true. But I feel like, in modern society, when we think about how the media portrays aging, or this terrible underrepresentation we have. So when we see aging and older age groups in society, which, is less frequent than other age groups, they're often based on these really kind of outdated, often offensive stereotypes that really are such a mismatch for the way people actually feel as they get older. And I think that's a commonality, it seems, across many countries and societies.
Yeah. Where did your passion come from? Because it's obvious that you are personally impassioned by this topic.
Yeah, I'm so passionate about it. I mean, I think anyone who kind of is socially conscious and wants to make the world a better place, this should be something that people care about, because it literally affects everyone. And I think, the people that it most impacts are the people who don't have the means or the status to kind of navigate around it. And I guess the other reason that I'm really passionate about it is, as a woman getting older, we have particular expectations, I think, from society about how we should age, about how we should look, about what our value is. And I feel quite resentful of that, being perfectly honest. And I hate to see the impact that has across people I know, women I know. I hate to see the impact of that, with even really young women now making changes to the way they look, because they feel oppression, like they feel that they can't just, live and exist and get older with confidence. And, I've got two beautiful young nieces, and I would just really love to think that the world might feel differently for them as they get older.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another new podcast out this year called Women Wiser Than Me, and the actress Julia Louis-Dreyfus is hosting that, and she did her initial podcast with Jane Fonda. And it was really interesting. In the midst of that conversation, Jane admitted that yes, she has had plastic surgery on her face, and now at the age of 80, I forget exactly 80 what it is, but that is the one thing she regrets.
Yeah.
She really regrets that she had, yeah, because to come to those expectations in her field as an actress, but also personally. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I should say, like, I'm not one of these, I wouldn't judge, I don't want to lay judgment on people for doing anything that they feel they need to. I wish they didn't feel the pressure. I wish we didn't feel the pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and all of this is related to images and public images and what are the expectations. And as you said, this is particularly difficult for women. And one of the ways that I first got to know about the Center for Better Aging was through your image library. I mean, nobody else is providing access to a library of age positive pictures. How did that initiative start, and how was it that you were able to convince people that yeah, we're going to offer these to the world to be able to use?
Yeah, it's a brilliant project. And I say that shamelessly because, I really feel it makes such a difference. Of all the things that we've done as an organization, it is one of the most sort of tangible ways, and in many ways, one of the most straightforward ways that we're able to try and make a change. And it started really small, being honest. It started in response to, there's a movement, I think it's just a UK movement, but on Twitter, which is called No More Wrinkly Hands. Hashtag no more
Yes,
wrinkly hands.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
maybe it's larger than that, but that it really, people getting really fed up that every single article in the media about aging, older people, social care, whatever it was, there was a picture of two hands clasped, wrinkly hands, disembodied. And it's just, so dehumanizing and lazy. And there were no other, as I said before, the representation of older age groups in terms of imagery is really poor. And we obviously, we're taking photos for our own work that tried to sort of get around that and to challenge that and to challenge some of these horrible stereotypes that we do see when we do see imagery. And we thought, actually, you know what if we make these available so other people can use them too? And it really grew from there. And I think one of the successes of the project is that we use real people in real settings. We're starting to dabble a little bit actually with more professional settings, but still real people, obviously, not models. But, I think they're authentic. And this is the thing that we really all need to show much more. It's like diversity of aging. It's not showing a really glamorous form of aging. It's not showing, a successful, idealized version of aging. It's about showing the huge range of people, circumstances, interests, lifestyles that exist as people get older. And people, that doesn't change. If anything, older age groups are getting more diverse in all ways possible. So yeah, the image library really was a chance to try and reflect that to the world. And yeah, we've had a huge response to it.
Well, I can tell you I'm a personal user and I speak often, and the images from your library are the images that are most consistent throughout my presentations. And that authenticity is important. And I so appreciate the diversity of the older adults that are highlighted in the collection, from LGBTQ folks to, various skin tones to um, clothes that represent different ethnicities or cultural backgrounds. So just thank you, thank you, thank you, and I spread the word as well about that resource.
Thank you. Thank you.
So one of the more remarkable things about the center is your ability to build coalition and action behind your ideas and research. So it's not just saying and discovering something; you are actually doing things. You are making a difference. What are your best tips with our audience about how to build coalition, particularly around issues that are not popular and people don't particularly understand, like ageism?
Oh, it's a great question. And I think, I'd like to start by saying I think coalition building can be really hard. It can be really hard work. You're often playing the long game, with coalition building. I think our approach is, solid evidence is so important. So a shared understanding of the problem that everybody kind of respects and understands. And people might be coming at things from slightly different angles, but it's really important to get the consensus about what the core challenge is and what is the outcome that you want to see, and get everyone on that page. I think it's really important who and how you involve people. So, who you pick to be part of coalitions, or who you attract to be part of coalitions. Tailoring your ask to be, in their interests, thinking about their needs, thinking about what barriers they might have to getting involved in your work, and how you can support them. Trust, patience, really important. Coalition can be a lot about compromise. Important to really think about issues from different people's points of view, and to be flexible, I think, often. And I think great comms is also the thing that's really important. So you need a plan. You need strong direction. You need to all know your roles. People need to know what's expected of them and how you're going to interact and work together. Who's driving it, who and how do people support it? And sometimes there's a need to formally agree that, depending on what the coalition looks like. And then I think the other thing is just, when you start to get success, when you start to make progress, it's like celebrating that, making sure people are updated on that. Success is really galvanizing. And especially those organizations that are giving up time and resource and energy to be part of something, showing them that it's making a difference, is hugely motivating.
Yeah. So, and part of the challenge can be, even how do you know when you're seeing a success, to be able to celebrate, because sometimes it's small steps along the way as well as the big ones. So you talked about the image library as being a success. I'm really curious about the employer pledge. Is that, and I forget, is that just getting launched, or are folks signing up at this point?
Yeah, so it's fairly recently launched. We launched at the end of last year. We've got, I think, around 140 employers signed up already. And, some really big name organizations, some government departments over here, as well as, smaller and medium sized organizations, charities, public sector, private sector, a really lovely range, actually. And that, in some ways, I think has, been fairly easy because I think the sort of proposition is really compelling. What we're asking employers to do is to think about the fact that their workforces are getting older and, what do they need to do to respond to that? What do they need to do to put, different policies or practices in place? How do they make workplaces work for people as they get older? And I think now, after, years of work by us and others, people are starting to really realize actually it's a hugely important part of the workforce. It's an experienced part of the workforce. Older workers as part of multi-generational teams improve productivity, they improve innovation. There's huge benefits in terms of mentoring and skills and knowledge transfer that happen. So, this really is an asset for organizations. And it's really actually, delightful to see so many organizations recognizing that and being like, we want to shout about it and we want to talk to our employees about it and we want to do something public.
Okay, so that's a successful program at Ageism, some success in the work initiative. How are you seeing progress and are you able to do much celebrating at this point as you take a look at the initiatives in homes related both to those that are already are built and those that are in new builds?
Yeah, really good question. So on the new build homes, so with that, we're trying to make all new build homes more accessible as standard. We had a huge piece of success. Again, a really good example of a coalition because we have a formal coalition called Housing Made for Everyone, HOME for short, which brings together disability, aging, and housing organisations to campaign for more accessible homes. And actually, we've had a bit of a breakthrough where the government has proposed to change building regulations to make them more accessible. And we're waiting for this sort of next phase of that to be implemented. So we're really keen to see more from government on that. And we are, continuing to talk about the importance of accessible homes to try and, make sure that that happens ultimately. But that was a really lovely example of how different organizations from different points of view, different perspectives, different interest groups actually all thought like this is a really important thing. How can we get together and use our collective power to change it?
And I think that ultimately this is another area where this may be initiated a conversation in talking about older adults, but and again with the age-friendly movement, I know that this is a concept that when we make these changes and we're thinking about older adults, they actually affect everyone and they can help improve the quality of life for everyone. I was just listening and my husband and I were having a conversation yesterday about the movement in this country for hospital at home, that people are not being kept in the hospital for very long at all. And this came up in part because a friend of mine, her brother was in a car accident in December and was in the hospital for weeks and weeks, and then he had to go into rehab for a period of time. And then they're like, okay, you need to go home. Well, he could not return to his own home because they could not fit in the equipment that was needed for his care. Fortunately, their father has a home, so he moved in with his father for a period of time before he was able to not need some of that equipment. But as we think about some of these changes that are happening, that's not just an older individual issue. That's going to be in this country. Anybody who's hospitalized, anybody who's going to need care, we're going to need to be able to provide that in our homes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. And it's a huge piece of the puzzle when you think about so social care and healthcare in this country, and you think about the need for people and the want for most of us to live as independently as possible. Well, if you're home, it's often your home that prevents you from doing that. And if
Yeah.
you had things like, wider doorways, if you didn't have steps up to your front door, if you had a house where you could easily just change the bathroom, so it wasn't a difficult situation for you to wash and get in and out of the bath. If you could make these changes simply, well, it would just be, really transformative. And you're absolutely right. There's also, on a day-to-day level, if you're a parent, if you have friends or relatives that, have different levels of mobility issues. These things really do help everyone.
Yeah. My husband and I bought a new home about 5 years ago, and we love it, but it is a terrible home. There is nothing about this that is mobility friendly or age friendly. So when my mom comes to visit, she goes out through the garage because she can kind of hold on to the wall, because out our front steps there isn't even a railing. And so we're aware there's some things that we need to do. We're also aware this is not our forever home.
Mhm.
We're here for a period of time, and that the next time we move, these are going to be considerations that are really important for us as we plan for our future selves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but in this country, I mean, housing supply is a big problem generally, but the lack of accessible housing options, is incredible when you consider the demographic change that we're going through and the need for more accessible homes. So yeah, I just feel like it's a huge oversight actually that we're not looking at stuff like this. And of course, again, if you think about those people who don't have very much money, or are in homes that they own perhaps, but they don't have a particularly large income, these things are all kind of insurmountable challenges actually, and then you find people really trapped in homes that are really no good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Emma, as you think about this work at the center and you're looking down the road, what's next? What should people know about your continued work, and how can they participate and help be supportive even on this side of the bond?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So the campaign that I mentioned at the beginning, so shorthand, we call it an anti-ageism campaign, but really it's going to be a campaign to change attitudes to aging. And that will launch in the autumn. And as I said before, it's part of this wider movement that we want to build. And it's not like we're starting from scratch. There's some amazing stuff happening already across the UK, and I'm sure in the US too. And so really what we want to do is try and in part to kind of knit some of that stuff together and to kind of support and amplify that work. But if people listening, watching would like to find out more about that, they can sign up to join our age friendly movement. I can share a link. I don't know how it's best to do that. But it would be, they will hear about the campaign as it develops. They will hear we tried to share information around how people can challenge ageism, or interesting articles on things we've seen, or examples of things that other people are doing. So yeah, that could be one way that people get involved. Also, you mentioned our image library before. We'd be absolutely delighted if people wanted to have a look at that, use it in their work. I mean, we have students using it in their kind of, school and college work. We have newspapers using it, or government departments. So there's a wide range of uses, and it's all free to download. All the images are free to download and use as people want to.
So we're going to be in further conversation, Emma, because here's a connection. I volunteer on the Ageism and Advisory Council of the American Society on Aging, and this October 7th will be the second year that we're lifting that up as Ageism Awareness Day. And so we have a campaign leading up to that. And so I think maybe we need to talk more about
Yeah,
what can we learn and how can we support each other's campaigns, since they're both kind of hitting in the fall. Yeah.
that would be great.
One thing that we like to do when we come to the end of our podcast is to ask our guests 3 questions about your own perspectives of aging. So can I ask these of you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Number one, when you think about how you've aged, what do you think has changed about you or grown with you that you really like about yourself?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think maybe it's something that is commonly felt. I feel much more self assured. I feel like I care much less what people think. I look back at things that, really used to preoccupy me, and I think, what a waste of time and energy. So yeah, I love that I care less.
Fantastic. Okay. Question number 2. What has surprised you most about you as you have aged?
I think the most surprising thing for me as I get older is that I don't feel older. It's funny, we had this a lot in the focus groups we did around our ageism campaign. I still generally feel the same. I know I've changed in lots of ways, but it's only when I think about my age in relation to other people, maybe colleagues, or I bump into someone I haven't seen for a long time, that I realize how much time has passed. Inside, I still feel very much the same. And I don't think that will change.
Yeah, absolutely. I I get it. And then the third question, is there someone you've met or worked with that has been in your life that has set a good example for you in aging? Someone that inspires you to age what we call aging abundantly?
Yeah, really tough question. So many people. I've been fortunate to work for so many brilliant women in my career who I've really looked up to and learned a lot from. I would also just like to give a shout out to the US campaigner Ashton Applewhite, who I'm sure you're very familiar with, because
Absolutely.
I just love everything she does. I love her perspective. She's so wise. And every time I hear her speak, it makes me think differently and it really enriches my perspective. So I would definitely say her.
And we'll give a plug for Ashton. She has a website called oldschool.info. I think it's .info. And I actually think that's how I found the Center for Better Aging to begin with, is because I know that you're listed there as one of the organizations from around the world that's engaged in this work. Well, thank you and our listeners for listening to this episode of The Art of Aging, part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. We want to hear from you. What's changed about you as you've aged that you love? What has surprised you most? And how do you define abundant aging? And who is your abundant aging hero or abundant aging influencer? You can join us at www.abundantagingpodcast, all one word.com to share your ideas. You can also give us feedback when you visit the Ruth Ross Parker Center for Abundant Aging. Our website is www.unitedchurchhomes, all one word.org/Parker-Center. And finally, keep October 6th, the day before Ageism Awareness Day, on your calendar, and when we'll be hosting our 8th annual symposium. You can join us live or virtually for a great day of sessions all around this year's topic, which is dismantling ageism. And we are really pleased that Dr. Tracy Gendron will be our keynote speaker. Tracy is a professor and head of the gerontology department at Virginia Commonwealth University. And we have multiple other speakers who are also related to institutions that I'm sure you're aware of their work, Emma. So that's it for this episode. Just one last time, Emma, do you want to say how people can find you? You go ahead and say your website address if you'd like.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just trying to get up the Age Friendly Movement URL. So it is aging-better.org.uk/age-friendly-movement. If people want, they can just go to agingbetter.org.uk and find their way from there.
And can they spell it better, both the American way, and still find you?
It's aging with an E. I'm sure if you Google it, it will come up.
Yeah. Yeah. And center is CENTRE.
Oh, yes. I forgot the change of center. Yes.
There are a few differences. Well, thank you. That's all for this episode, and we look forward to you joining us next time. Peace.
Thank you very much, Beth. Cheers.